So this lesson I want to start preparing myself for actually being able to get details about files, the metadata for the files, right? And that's inside the database. So I have one thing that kind of annoys me, and that is right now I have something called a file service right here, but that's actually not getting file metadata, it's actually getting the actual file from Firebase. File storage actually, to be more precise. Now the problem is that I call this the file service, and I also need now a file service for the metadata. So I'm going to change the name for this guy, and also to kind of show you guys how easily it is to actually refactor, but also that you have to change the name a few different places, so it's actually better to find the right name the first time before you actually start creating the files. So let's just start out by renaming the actual file name, and I'll right click here and I'll refactor. You have to refactor, don't just rename, you have to refactor, because then automatically it'll change that name all over your code where you're using this name right here. So I'm going to call this file storage now instead of just file service, file storage service. There we go. The next thing, I just want to rename the spec file as well, so when we do testing later, that'll have the same name and I won't get confused. So that's also going to be a file storage service right here, spec file. There we go. So now those are out of the way. But that's not enough. If you open the file storage file, it's actually still called the file service in here. Of course, I also want that to be called file storage service. So let's just refactor that guy as well. So let's do refactor, rename, and again you can see the shortcut there if you want to use that. File storage service, there we go, that's out of the way. I'm not done yet. Even though it started now updating these guys, it says file storage service here now instead of just file service. It also went to the profile component and changed that, but here we still call it the file service. So let's just refactor that as well, right? Just to get the naming complete, right? So file storage service in here as well, storage service. Yeah, let's just copy that because I'm going to need it one more place because I also use it inside the user service. And this, my point is just get your namings correct instead of having to refactor your code. But even though if you end up actually wanting to rename it, it's not rocket science to do it, right? Sweet. So now we have those available and we call this the file storage service now, which I think makes more sense. Because what I want to do is now add under the database just a file service in here, right? So let's try and do that. So we'll make a new service, ng generate service. It's going to be under the shared folder, under DB, and it's going to be called file service. And again, I could call it file metadata service, really up to you if you want to kind of break this down, but for now I'm just going to call it file service. Now the file service is just like the folder, it's going to require to use Angular Firestore, so let's just add that in the constructor right here. Now another thing I want the file service to do is have a function that can get file, right? So we're going to get a file and we're going to get the file, we're going to get the file using the UID, just like we did with the folder. Now when we get a file back, we're going to return this as an observable of the type, and you guessed it, file. So here we have the file that we can actually return. Now how do we do this? Well, we're going to do kind of the same thing that we did with the folder service again. We're going to use this.afs. Now notice this is a rinse and repeat now. We're doing the same thing like we've done so many times, and now we're just, it should just be easy now for you guys to do it. Now I'm just going to put in file here because there's one very important thing right here, and that is you need to import the actual file, and right now it's trying to import the ECMAScript one, but we actually have our own implementation again, so I need to import that one or else it'll use the wrong file format for me. Right, so now we have the doc right here, and I want to get the doc from the files, that's the name inside my Firestore, and let's just add the unique identifier like this, so now we have that available. And now with that we can actually, again, like we've done so many times, use the value changes, and again, just like last time, I want to map this guy because I want to add the unique identifier as well. So let's just map this so we have the file available right here, and then we can kind of get that metadata, and we can say if, notice I forgot the if statement. I remember the if statement this time, right? I remembered it. Yeah, I did. I rock. Yay! And if there is a file, then I want to just set the file unique identifier equal to the unique identifier right here. And then I return the file in the end. There we go. So that should be all we have to do. Now we pretty much have a way to go and grab the actual file. What if you actually want the metadata right away? Let's just try and have a look. We can also do something called the snapshot changes right here, and that'll actually return an action. You can go and read about this under Angular Firebase. You can go read about how the snapshot changes work, but that'll actually get the metadata for you. But again, I don't want to use the metadata because I already have the unique identifier right here. So why would I go and grab that with metadata? That would be a waste of time right now. I'll just add the UID with a map when I get the actual file back. So next lesson we'll try and use this That's it for this lesson. We made a few structural changes and then we kind of just added a new service so we can start getting files. See you next time. Have fun.